Section 22 of the Aeneid of Virgil. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Book 11, Part 2. Now, royal father, to the present state of our affairs and of this high debate, if in your arms thus early you defied, and think your fortune is already tried, if one defeat has brought us down so low as never more in fields to meet the foe, then I conclude for peace. 'Tis time to treat, and lie like vassals at the victor's feet. But oh, if any ancient blood remains, one drop of all our fathers in our veins, that man would I prefer before the rest, who dared his death with an undaunted breast, who comely fell by no dishonest wound, to shun that sight, and dying gnaw'd the ground. But if we still have fresh recruits in store, if our confederates can afford us more, if the contended field we bravely fought, and not a bloodless victory was bought, their losses equal'd ours, and for their slain with equal fires they fill'd the shining plain. Why thus, unforced, should we so tamely yield, and ere the trumpet sounds, resign the field? Good unexpected, evils unforeseen, appear by turns, as fortune shifts the scene. Some, rais'd aloft, come tumbling down amain, then fall so hard they bound and rise again. If Diomed refuse his aid to lend, the great Messapus yet remains our friend. Tolumnius, who foretells events, is ours. The Italian chiefs and princes join their powers. Nor least in number, nor in name the last, your own brave subjects have your cause embrac'd. Above the rest, the Volscian Amazon contains an army in herself alone, and heads a squadron terrible to sight, with glittering shields and brazen armour bright. Yet, if the foe a single fight demand, and I alone the public peace withstand, if you consent, he shall not be refus'd, nor find a hand to victory unus'd. This new Achilles, let him take the field, with fated armour and Vulcanian shield. For you, my royal father, and my fame, I, Turnus, not the least of all my name, devote my soul. He calls me hand to hand, and I alone will answer his demand. Drances shall rest secure, and neither share the danger, nor divide the prize of war. While they debate, nor these nor those will yield, Aeneas draws his forces to the field, and moves his camp. The scouts with flying speed return, and through the frighted city spread th' unpleasing news. The Trojans are descried, in battle marching by the river side, and bending to the town, they take the alarm. Some tremble, some are bold, all in confusion arm. The impetuous youth press forward to the field, they clash the sword and clatter on the shield. The fearful matrons raise a screaming cry, old feeble men with fainter groans reply. A jarring sound results, and mingles in the sky, like that of swans remurmuring to the floods, or birds of diff'ring kinds in hollow woods. Turnus the occasion takes, and cries aloud: "Talk on, ye quaint haranguers of the crowd! Declaim in praise of peace, when danger calls, and the fierce foes in arms approach the walls." He said, and, turning short, with speedy pace, casts back a scornful glance, and quits the place. Thou, Volusus, the Volscian troops command to mount, and lead thyself our Ardean band. Messapus and Catillus, post your force along the fields, to charge the Trojan horse. Some guard the passes, others man the wall, drawn up in arms; the rest attend my call. They swarm from every quarter of the town, and with disorder'd haste the rampires crown. Good old Latinus, when he saw too late the gath'ring storm just breaking on the state, dismiss'd the council till a fitter time, and own'd his easy temper as his crime. Who, forced against his reason, had complied to break the treaty for the promis'd bride. Some help to sink new trenches, others aid to ram the stones or raise the palisade. Hoarse trumpets sound the alarm; around the walls runs a distracted crew, whom their last labour calls. A sad procession in the streets is seen, of matrons that attend the mother queen. High in her chair she sits, and at her side, with downcast eyes, appears the fatal bride. They mount the cliff where Pallas' temple stands, pray'rs in their mouths, and presents in their hands. With censers first they fume the sacred shrine, then in this common supplication join: "O patroness of arms, unspotted maid, Propitious hear, and lend thy Latins aid! Break short the pirate's lance, pronounce his fate, And lay the Phrygian low before the gate." Now Turnus arms for fight. His back and breast well-temper'd steel and scaly brass invest. The cuishes which his brawny thighs enfold Are mingled metal damask'd o'er with gold. His faithful falchion sits upon his side, Nor casque nor crest his manly features hide; But bare to view, amid surrounding friends, With godlike grace he from the tow'r descends. Exulting in his strength, he seems to dare His absent rival, and to promise war. Freed from his keepers, thus with broken reins, The wanton courser prances o'er the plains; Or in the pride of youth o'erleaps the mounds, And snuffs the females in forbidden grounds; Or seeks his watering in the well-known flood, To quench his thirst, and cool his fiery blood. He swims luxuriant in the liquid plain, And o'er his shoulder flows his waving mane. He neighs, he snorts, he bears his head on high; Before his ample chest the frothy waters fly. Soon as the prince appears without the gate, The Volscians with their virgin leader wait His last commands. Then with a graceful mien Lights from her lofty steed the warrior queen. Her squadron imitates, and each descends, Whose common suit Camilla thus commends: "If sense of honour, if a soul secure Of inborn worth, that can all tests endure, Can promise aught, or on itself rely, Greatly to dare, to conquer, or to die, Then I alone, sustain'd by these, will meet The Tyrrhene troops, and promise their defeat. Ours be the danger, ours the sole renown: You, general, stay behind, and guard the town." Turnus awhile stood mute, with glad surprise, And on the fierce Virago fix'd his eyes; Then thus return'd: "O grace of Italy! With what becoming thanks can I reply? Not only words lie lab'ring in my breast, But thought itself is by thy praise oppress'd. Yet rob me not of all, but let me join My toils, my hazard, and my fame with thine. The Trojan, not in stratagem unskill'd, Sends his light horse before to scour the field; Himself thro' steep ascents and thorny brakes A larger compass to the city takes. This news my scouts confirm, and I prepare To foil his cunning, and his force to dare; With chosen foot his passage to forelay, And place an ambush in the winding way. Thou, with thy Volscians, face the Tuscan horse; The brave Messapus shall thy troops enforce, With those of Tibur, and the Latian band, Subjected all to thy supreme command." This said, he warns Messapus to the war; Then ev'ry chief exhorts with equal care. All thus encourag'd, his own troops he joins, And hastes to prosecute his deep designs. Inclos'd with hills, a winding valley lies, By nature form'd for fraud, and fitted for surprise. A narrow track, by human steps untrode, Leads thro' perplexing thorns to this obscure abode. High o'er the vale a steepy mountain stands, Whence the surveying sight the nether ground commands. The top is level, an offensive seat Of war, and from the war a safe retreat; For on the right and left is room to press The foes at hand, or from afar distress; To drive 'em headlong downward, and to pour On their descending backs a stony show'r. Thither young Turnus took the well-known way, Possess'd the pass, and in blind ambush lay. Meantime Latonian Phoebe from the skies Beheld th' approaching war with hateful eyes, And call'd the light-foot Opis to her aid, Her most belov'd and ever trusty maid. Then with a sigh began: "Camilla goes To meet her death amidst her fatal foes. The nymphs I lov'd of all my mortal train, Invested with Diana's arms, in vain. Nor is my kindness for the virgin new; 'Twas born with her, and with her years it grew. Her father Metapus, when forc'd away From old Privernum for tyrannic sway, Snatch'd up, and sav'd from his prevailing foes This tender babe, companion of his woes. Casmilla was her mother, but he drown'd One hissing letter in a softer sound, And call'd Camilla. Thro' the woods he flies, Wrapp'd in his robe the royal infant lies. His foes in sight, he mends his weary pace. With shout and clamours they pursue the chase. The banks of Amasene at length he gains. The raging flood his farther flight restrains, Rais'd o'er the borders with unusual rains. Prepar'd to plunge into the stream, he fears, Not for himself, but for the charge he bears. Anxious, he stops awhile, and thinks in haste; Then, desperate in distress, resolves at last. A knotty lance of well-boil'd oak he bore, The middle part with cork he cover'd o'er. He clos'd the child within the hollow space, With twigs of bending osier bound the case. Then pois'd the spear, heavy with human weight, And thus invoked my favour for the freight. "Accept, great goddess of the woods," he said, "Sent by her sire, this dedicated maid. Thro' air she flies a suppliant to thy shrine, And the first weapons that she knows are thine." He said, and with full force the spear he threw. Above the sounding waves Camilla flew. Then, press'd by foes, he stemm'd the stormy tide, And gain'd, by stress of arms, the farther side. His fasten'd spear he pull'd from out the ground, And, victor of his vows, his infant nymph unbound. Nor, after that, in towns which walls enclose, Would trust his hunted life amidst his foes; But, rough in open air, he chose to lie. Earth was his couch, his covering was the sky. On hills unshorn, or in a desert den, He shunn'd the dire society of men. A shepherd's solitary life he led; His daughter with the milk of mares he fed. The dugs of bears, and every savage beast, he drew, And thro' her lips the liquor press'd. The little Amazon could scarcely go; He loads her with a quiver and a bow. And that she might her stagg'ring steps command, He with a slender jav'lin fills her hand. Her flowing hair no golden fillet bound, Nor swept her trailing robe the dusty ground. Instead of these, a tiger's hide o'erspread Her back and shoulders, fasten'd to her head. The flying dart she first attempts to fling, And round her tender temples toss'd the sling. Then, as her strength with years increas'd, began To pierce aloft in air the soaring swan, And from the clouds to fetch the heron and the crane. The Tuscan matrons with each other vied, To bless their rival sons with such a bride. But she disdains their love, to share with me The sylvan shades and vow'd virginity. And, oh, I wish, contented with my cares Of savage spoils, she had not sought the wars. Then had she been of my celestial train, And shunn'd the fate that dooms her to be slain. But since, opposing heaven's decree, she goes To find her death among forbidden foes, Haste with these arms, and take thy steepy flight, Where with the gods averse the Latins fight. This bow to thee, this quiver I bequeath, This chosen arrow to revenge her death. By whate'er hand Camilla shall be slain, Or of the Trojan or Italian train, Let him not pass unpunish'd from the plain. Then, in a hollow cloud, myself will aid To bear the breathless body of my maid. Unspoil'd shall be her arms, and unprofan'd Her holy limbs with any human hand, And in a marble tomb laid in her native land. She said. The faithful nymph descends from high With rapid flight, and cuts the sounding sky. Black clouds and stormy winds around her body fly. By this, the Trojan and the Tuscan horse, Drawn up in squadrons with united force, Approach the walls. The sprightly coursers, bound, Press forward on their bits, and shift their ground. Shields, arms, and spears flash horribly from far, And the fields glitter with a waving war. Opposed to these, come on with furious force Messapus, Coras, and the Latian horse. These, in the body placed on either hand, Sustain'd and closed by fair Camilla's band. Advancing in a line, they couch their spears, And less the middle space appears. Thick smoke obscures the field, and scarce are seen The neighing coursers and the shouting men. In distance of their darts they stop their course, then man to man they rush, and horse to horse. The face of heav'n their flying jav'lins hide, and deaths unseen are dealt on either side. Tyrrhenus and Aconteus, void of fear, by mettled coursers borne in full career, meet first opposed, and with a mighty shock their horses' heads against each other knock. Far from his steed is fierce Aconteus cast, as with an engine's force or lightning's blast. He rolls along in blood, and breathes his last. The Latin squadrons take a sudden fright, and sling their shields behind, to save their backs in flight. Spurring at speed, to their own walls they drew. Close in the rear the Tuscan troops pursue, and urge their flight. Asylas leads the chase, till seiz'd with shame they wheel about, and face, receive their foes, and raise a threat'ning cry. The Tuscans take their turn to fear and fly. So swelling surges with a thund'ring roar, driven on each other's backs, insult the shore. Bound o'er the rocks, encroach upon the land, and far upon the beach eject the sand. Then backward with a swing they take their way, repuls'd from upper ground, and seek their mother sea. With equal hurry quit the invaded shore, and swallow back the sand and stones they spew'd before. Twice were the Tuscans masters of the field, twice by the Latins in their turn repell'd. Asham'd, at length to the third charge they ran, both hosts resolv'd, and mingled man to man. Now dying groans are heard, the fields are strow'd with falling bodies, and are drunk with blood. Arms, horses, men, on heaps together lie. Confus'd the fight, and more confus'd the cry. Orsilochus, who durst not press too near strong Remulus, at distance drove his spear, and stuck the steel beneath his horse's ear. The fiery steed, impatient of the wound, curvets, and springing upward with a bound, his helpless lord cast backward on the ground. Catillus pierc'd Aeolus first, then drew his reeking lance, and at Herminius threw, the mighty champion of the Tuscan crew. His neck and throat unarm'd, his head was bare, but shaded with a length of yellow hair. Secure he fought, exposed on every part, a spacious mark for swords, and for the flying dart. Across the shoulders came the feather'd wound, transfix'd he fell, and doubled to the ground. The sands with streaming blood are sanguine dyed, and death with honour sought on either side. Resistless through the war Camilla rode, in danger unappall'd, and pleas'd with blood. One side was bare for her exerted breast, one shoulder with her painted quiver press'd. Now from afar her fatal jav'lins play, now with her axe's edge she hews her way. Diana's arms upon her shoulder sound, and when too closely press'd she quits the ground, from her bent bow she sends a backward wound. Her maids in martial pomp on either side, Larina, Tulla, fierce Tarpeia ride, Italians all, in peace their queen's delight, in war the bold companions of the fight. So march'd the Thracian Amazons of old, when Thermodon with bloody billows roll'd. Such troops as these in shining arms were seen, when Theseus met in fight their maiden queen. Such to the field Penthesilea led, from the fierce virgin when the Grecians fled. With such return'd triumphant from the war. Her maids with cries attend the lofty car. They clash with manly force their moony shields, with female shouts resound the Phrygian fields. Who foremost, and who last heroic maid, on the cold earth were by thy courage laid? Thy spear of mountain ash Eumenius first, with fury driven, from side to side transpierc'd. A purple stream came spouting from the wound. Bath'd in his blood he lies, and bites the ground. Liris and Pegasus at once she slew. The former, as the slacken'd reins he drew of his faint steed; the latter, as he stretch'd his arm to prop his friend, the jav'lin reach'd. By the same weapon sent from the same hand, both fall together, and both spurn the sand. Amastrus next is added to the slain; the rest in rout she follows o'er the plain. Tereus, Harpalycus, Demophon, and Chromis at full speed her fury shun. Of all her deadly darts not one she lost; each was attended with a Trojan ghost. Young Ornithus bestrode a hunter steed, swift for the chase, and of Apulian breed. Him from afar she spied, in arms unknown; o'er his broad back an ox's hide was thrown. His helm a wolf, whose gaping jaws were spread, a covering for his cheeks, and grinn'd around his head. He clench'd within his hand an iron prong, and tower'd above the rest, conspicuous in the throng. Him soon she singled from the flying train, and slew with ease, then thus insults the slain: "Vain hunter, didst thou think thro' woods to chase the savage herd, a vile and trembling race? Here cease thy vaunts, and own my victory. A woman warrior was too strong for thee. Yet, if the ghosts demand the conqu'ror's name, confessing great Camilla, save thy shame." Then Butes and Orsilochus she slew, the bulkiest bodies of the Trojan crew. But Butes, breast to breast, the spear descends above the gorget where his helmet ends, and o'er the shield which his left side defends. Orsilochus and she their courses ply; he seems to follow, and she seems to fly. But in a narrower ring she makes the race, and then he flies, and she pursues the chase. Gathering at length on her deluded foe, she swings her axe, and rises to the blow. Full on the helm behind, with such a sway the weapon falls, the riven steel gives way. He groans, he roars, he sues in vain for grace; brains mingled with his blood besmear his face. Astonish'd Aunus just arrives by chance to see his fall, nor farther dares advance; but, fixing on the horrid maid his eye, he stares, and shakes, and finds it vain to fly. Yet, like a true Ligurian, born to cheat, At least while fortune favour'd his deceit, cries out aloud: "What courage have you shown, Who trust your courser's strength, and not your own? Forego the vantage of your horse, alight, And then on equal terms begin the fight. It shall be seen, weak woman, what you can, When foot to foot you combat with a man." He said. She glows with anger and disdain, Dismounts with speed to dare him on the plain, And leaves her horse at large among her train. With her drawn sword defies him to the field, And marching lifts aloft her maiden shield. The youth, who thought his cunning did succeed, Reins round his horse, and urges all his speed; Adds the remembrance of the spur, and hides The goring rowels in his bleeding sides. "Vain fool and coward!" cries the lofty maid, "Caught in the train which thou thyself hast laid. On others practise thy Ligurian arts; Thin stratagems and tricks of little hearts Are lost on me; nor shalt thou safe retire With vaunting lies to thy fallacious sire." At this so fast her flying feet she sped, That soon she strain'd beyond his horse's head. Then, turning short, at once she seiz'd the rein, And laid the boaster grov'ling on the plain. Not with more ease the falcon from above Trusses in middle air the trembling dove, Then plumes the prey, in her strong pounces bound; The feathers foul with blood come tumbling to the ground. Now mighty Jove, from his superior height, With his broad eye surveys th' unequal fight. He fires the breast of Tarchon with disdain, And sends him to redeem th' abandon'd plain. Betwixt the broken ranks the Tuscan rides, And these encourages, and those he chides; Recalls each leader by his name from flight, Renews their ardour, and restores the fight. "What panic fear has seiz'd your souls? O shame! O brand perpetual of th' Etrurian name! Cowards incurable, a woman's hand Drives, breaks, and scatters your ignoble band. Now cast away the sword, and quit the shield. What use of weapons which you dare not wield? Not thus you fly your female foes by night, Nor shun the feast when the full bowls invite; When to fat off'rings the glad augur calls, And the shrill hornpipe sounds to bacchanals. These are your studied cares, your lewd delight, Swift to debauch, but slow to manly fight." Thus having said, he spurs amid the foes, Not managing the life he meant to lose. The first he found he seiz'd with headlong haste, In his strong grip, and clasp'd around the waist. 'Twas Venulus, whom from his horse he tore, And laid athwart his own in triumph bore. Loud shouts ensue; the Latins turn their eyes, And view th' unusual sight with vast surprise. The fiery Tarchon, flying o'er the plains, Press'd in his arms the pond'rous prey sustains. Then with his shorten'd spear explores around His jointed arms, to fix a deadly wound. Nor less the captive struggles for his life; He writhes his body to prolong the strife, And, fencing for his naked throat, exerts His utmost vigour, and the point averts. So stoops the yellow eagle from on high, And bears a speckled serpent thro' the sky. Fast'ning his crooked talons on the prey, The pris'ner hisses thro' the liquid way, Resists the royal hawk, and, tho' oppress'd, She fights in volumes, and erects her crest. Turn'd to her foe, she stiffens every scale, And shoots her forky tongue, and whisks her threat'ning tail. Against the victor all defence is weak. Th' imperial bird still plies her with his beak. He tears her bowels, and her breast he gores, Then claps his pinions, and securely soars. Thus, thro' the midst of circling enemies, Strong Tarchon snatch'd and bore away his prize. The Tyrrhene troops, that shrunk before, now press the Latins, and presume the like success. Then Aruns, doom'd to death, his arts assay'd, To murder unespied the Volscian maid. This way and that his winding course he bends, And wheresoe'er she turns, her steps attends. When she retires victorious from the chase, He wheels about with care, and shifts his place. When, rushing on, she seeks her foe's flight, He keeps aloof, but keeps her still in sight. He threats, and trembles, trying every way, Unseen to kill, and safely to betray. Chloreus, the priest of Cybele, from far, Glitt'ring in Phrygian arms amidst the war, Was by the virgin view'd. The steed he press'd Was proud with trappings, and his brawny chest With scales of gilded brass was cover'd o'er. A robe of Tyrian dye the rider wore. With deadly wounds he gall'd the distant foe. Gnossian his shafts, and Lycian was his bow. A golden helm his front and head surrounds. A gilded quiver from his shoulder sounds. Gold weav'd with linen on his thighs he wore, With flowers of needlework distinguish'd o'er. With golden buckles bound, and gather'd up before. Him the fierce maid beheld with ardent eyes, Fond and ambitious of so rich a prize. Or that the temple might his trophies hold, Or else to shine herself in Trojan gold. Blind in her haste, she chases him alone, And seeks his life, regardless of her own. This lucky moment the sly traitor chose. Then, starting from his ambush, up he rose, And threw, but first to heav'n address'd his vows. O patron of Socrates' high abodes, Phoebus, the ruling pow'r among the gods, Whom first we serve, whole woods of unctuous pine Are fell'd for thee, and to thy glory shine. By thee protected with our naked souls, Thro' flames unsinged we march, and tread the kindled coals. Give me propitious pow'r to wash away The stains of this dishonourable day. Nor spoils nor triumph from the fact I claim, But with my future actions trust my fame. Let me by stealth this female plague o'ercome, And from the field return inglorious home. Apollo heard, and granting half his pray'r, Shuffled in winds the rest, and toss'd in empty air. He gives the death desir'd; his safe return By southern tempests to the seas is borne. Now, when the jav'lin whizz'd along the skies, Both armies on Camilla turn'd their eyes, Directed by the sound. Of either host, th' unhappy virgin, though concern'd the most, Was only deaf, so greedy was she bent On golden spoils, and on her prey intent. Till in her pap the winged weapon stood, Infix'd, and deeply drunk the purple blood. Her sad attendants hasten to sustain Their dying lady, drooping on the plain. Far from their sight the trembling Aruns flies, With beating heart, and fear confus'd with joys. Nor dares he farther to pursue his blow, Or ev'n to bear the sight of his expiring foe. As when the wolf has torn a bullock's hide, At unawares, or wrench'd a shepherd's side. Conscious of his audacious deed, he flies, And claps his quivering tail between his thighs. So, speeding once, the wretch no more attends, But, spurring forward, herds among his friends. She wrench'd the jav'lin with her dying hands, But wedg'd within her breast the weapon stands. The wood she draws, the steely point remains. She staggers in her seat with agonizing pains. A gath'ring mist o'erclouds her cheerful eyes, And from her cheeks the rosy colour flies. Then turns to her, whom of her female train she trusted most, and thus she speaks with pain: "Acca, 'tis past! He swims before my sight Inexorable death, and claims his right. Bear my last words to Turnus; fly with speed, And bid him timely to my charge succeed. Repel the Trojans, and the town relieve. Farewell, and in this kiss my parting breath receive." She said, and sliding sunk upon the plain, Dying, her open'd hand forsakes the rein. Short and more short she pants; by slow degrees Her mind the passage from her body frees. She drops her sword, she nods her plumy crest, Her drooping head declining on her breast. In the last sigh her struggling soul expires, And, murmuring with disdain, to Stygian sounds retires. A shout that struck the golden stars ensued; Despair and rage the languish'd fight renew'd. The Trojan troops and Tuscans in a line Advance to charge; the mix'd Arcadians join. But Cynthia's maid, high seated, from afar Surveys the field and fortune of the war. Unmov'd awhile, till prostrate on the plain, Welt'ring in blood, she sees Camilla slain, And round her corpse, of friends and foes, a fighting train. Then from the bottom of her breast she drew A mournful sigh, and these sad words ensue: "Too dear a fine, ah, much lamented maid, For warring with the Trojans thou hast paid; Nor aught avail'd, in this unhappy strife, Diana's sacred arms to save thy life. Yet, unreveng'd, thy goddess will not leave Her vot'ry's death, nor with vain sorrow grieve. Branded the wretch, and be his name abhorr'd, But after ages shall thy praise record. Th' inglorious coward soon shall press the plain. Thus vows thy queen, and thus the fates ordain." High o'er the field there stood a hilly mound, Sacred the place, and spread with oaks around, Where, in a marble tomb, Dercennus lay, A king that once in Latium bore the sway. The beauteous Opis thither bent her flight, To mark the traitor Aruns from the height. Him in refulgent arms she soon espied, Swollen with success, and loudly thus she cried: "Thy backward steps, vain boaster, are too late. Turn like a man at length, and meet thy fate. Charg'd with my message, to Camilla go, And say I sent thee to the shades below, An honour undeserv'd from Cynthia's bow." She said, and from her quiver chose with speed The winged shaft predestin'd for the deed. Then to the stubborn yew her strength applied, Till the far distant horns approach'd on either side. The bowstring touch'd her breast, so strong she drew; Whizzing in air the fatal arrow flew. At once the twanging bow and sounding dart The traitor heard, and felt the point within his heart. Him beating with his heels, in pangs of death, His flying friends to foreign fields bequeath. The conqu'ring damsel, with expanded wings, The welcome message to her mistress brings. Their leader lost, the Volscians quit the field, And, unsustain'd, the chiefs of Turnus yield. The frighted soldiers, when their captains fly, More on their speed than on their strength rely. Confus'd in flight, they bear each other down, And spur their horses headlong to the town. Driven by their foes, and to their fears resign'd, Not once they turn, but take their wounds behind. These drop the shield, and those the lance forego, Or on their shoulders bear the slacken'd bow. The hoofs of horses, with a rattling sound, Beat short and thick, and shake the rotten ground. Black clouds of dust come rolling in the sky, And o'er the darken'd walls and rampires fly. The trembling matrons from their lofty stands Rend heav'n with female shrieks, and wring their hands. All pressing on, pursuers and pursued, Are crush'd in crowds, a mingled multitude. Some happy few escape; The throng too late rush on for entrance, till they choke the gate. Even in the sight of home the wretched sire looks on, and sees his helpless son expire. Then in affright the folding gates they close, but leave their friends excluded with their foes. The vanquish'd cry, the victors loudly shout, 'Tis terror all within, and slaughter all without. Blind in their fear, they bounce against the wall, or to the moats pursued precipitate their fall. The Latian virgins, valiant with despair, arm'd on the towers, the common danger share. So much of zeal their country's cause inspir'd, so much Camilla's great example fir'd. Poles sharpen'd in the flames from high they throw, with imitated darts to gall the foe. Their lives for godlike freedom they bequeath, and crowd each other to be first in death. Meantime to Turnus, ambush'd in the shade, with heavy tidings came th' unhappy maid. The Volscians overthrown, Camilla kill'd, the foes, entirely masters of the field, like a resistless flood come rolling on. The cry goes off the plain, and thickens to the town. Inflam'd with rage, for so the Furies fire the Daunian's breast, and so the fates require, he leaves the hilly pass, the woods in vain possess'd, and downward issues on the plain. Scarce was he gone, when to the straits, now freed from secret foes, the Trojan troops succeed. Thro' the black forest and the ferny brake, unknowingly secure, their way they take. From the rough mountains to the plain descend, and there, in order drawn, their line extend. Both armies now in open fields are seen, nor far the distance of the space between. Both to the city bend. Aeneas sees thro' smoking fields his hast'ning enemies, and Turnus views the Trojans in array, and hears th' approaching horses proudly neigh. Soon had their hosts in bloody battle join'd, but westward to the sea the sun declin'd. Entrench'd before the town both armies lie, while night with sable wings involves the sky. End of Section 22.